Hello again, this is Lydia Machova from languagementoring.com, and today I'm going to show you more about the wonderful Goldlist method, which is used to remember vocabulary into a long-term memory. If you haven't seen my video from yesterday where I explained what this method is about, then please first go to that video because you're not going to understand much of what I'm going to say now. I hope that it did interest you as much as it interested me when I first heard about it. And I bet you're a bit skeptical, right? You're thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. Am I just supposed to, or am I just going to remember 30% of some words which I wrote 2 weeks ago? Why would that work, right? But trust me, all you need to do is to try it out yourself, and you will see after the first 2 weeks how amazingly this works, and you will fall in love with the method for sure. So today I'm going to show you tell you a few more details about it and what to do when things don't really work like you thought, or why we do some things which we do, etc. So first, question number one, where do I find this vocabulary? How do I find these words, right? The most important questions. I personally recommend to work with books or any text that we've read, and to work only with vocabulary which we've seen in context. I personally believe this is really important, because if you just work with a random list of words, let's say a random list of trees or flowers or colors or whatever, I think that we don't really learn these words well. We cannot remember them because we don't have any relationship with them. We haven't seen them in a particular phrase. We don't know how these words really work, how they act, what they combine with, etc. So that's why I always go for collocations. And whenever I read a book or any text, I try to underline the expressions, never individual words, but expressions which I found there. Okay, so for example, I read a Russian book right now, and I will always insist on finding, let's say, 10 expressions every day from the reading, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes of reading the book. I want to find 10 of them, and then after 2 days I have material to create a new head list for the Goldlist method. Okay, so this is where I take my vocabulary from. I know that David James, the author of this method, uses even dictionaries or lists of words which he finds in a course book, etc. And it clearly works for him. So that's another approach to learning vocabulary. My own experience is that it works much better and is much more natural if we work with words which we've already seen somewhere. Okay, now as you've noticed, we kind of put numbers in front of all these lines, and these numbers continue in every head list. So if we start here with you see we end with 300 over here. When you look at the list number 2, we continue with 301 and continue to continue on with the other lists. The other distillations also have their own numbering. So here we have a number that we started with, and it will continue on the next list with the next number. Okay, and in this way you always know how many words you put into your head list, and you know how many you already remember, how many you have in your long-term memory, because this is what is left from this list, and this is what is left from this list. So the numbers are kind of interesting to compare, where I am with my vocabulary, with the growing of my vocabulary. But the numbers in itself, I think, are not that extremely important. You could just, you don't have to really use them at all. It's kind of just motivating, especially when you're writing like your 800th expression. That's actually pretty motivating and makes you feel good about learning vocabulary and growing it in such a fast way. Okay? Now, the question I always get asked is, what if I don't remember 30% of the words from the last list? Okay, so what if I look at these words and I don't remember anything? Now, there will be days when that happens. And usually there is a reason behind this, but you will probably not realize it when you start with the method, because you need to have more experience to realize what works and what doesn't. My experience is that if you were not mentally, physically, emotionally okay when writing this list, you will most probably not remember anything. And it's really important to enjoy writing these words, just writing them out nicely, not trying to memorize them, and then the method works really well. But if you're thinking about what you're going to do today, or you're in a rush, you're under stress, someone is disturbing you, etc., then it's pretty probable that your brain will not really take much from writing these words, okay? But don't worry, that's perfectly okay, because what you can do is you can combine 2 lines to make one, okay? So even if you did not remember anything in this list, you can still continue in the process, and you will just take 1 or 2 expressions and you will combine them together. It can be very simple, like you had a word dog and you have the word bread, so you just write bread/dog, okay? It doesn't need to logically be put together. Now that would happen if we had individual words. But what I work with normally is expressions. So I would, for example, create the expression, the dog ate the bread, or something like that, okay? Kind of put it together. But it's really up to you. You can either put them just next to each other or create a little phrase as you like, but make sure the phrase is correct grammatically, because if you do it by yourself, maybe, you could make a mistake in that. So one thing you can do is just combine 2 lines and create one, and in this way you will get rid of a few lines in the original list, okay? What you can also do is just write 1 or 2 more lines below here. Let me see if I find a list where I did that. It happens here and there when I just cannot put anything together, and I don't want to throw it out yet because I really don't think I know it. So I don't put a number in there because it's not part of the normal numbering. It's an extra expression, and then I have 1 line extra. No big deal, okay? But when I distill it again, then I try to not prolong it 1 more line. In this case, I had to, so this was a very difficult head list for me. But let me see. Okay, the last distillation, as you can see, out of 10, I made only 7 expressions, and I'm telling you, I wouldn't put it in there if I wasn't absolutely sure that these are the expressions that I don't know, and I wouldn't put them away if I wasn't sure I know them. Okay, so this is what you can do. You just put an extra line, no big deal. You continue in the method, and you will see this will not happen very often. This will happen here and there, but most of the times it will work perfectly, and you will remember 30%, and 70 will be new to you. Now, how do I actually know how many words or which words I remember? I have a system for that, where I make little ticks if I knew the expression, make a little dot if I kind of wasn't really sure or I made a little mistake, and I make a little circle like this if I had no clue. Like if I saw the Slovak expression, it's like no idea how to say this in Russian, okay? And that helps me decide which words to keep in the list and which words to take out, because I know that the ones which had a tick are the ones I knew. But if there's a tick and a little dot, I hope you can see that, the first one, right? That means like I knew it, but maybe I made a mistake in the, let's say, the accent in Russian, okay? Or maybe just a little pronunciation thing, or I don't know, a preposition, etc. Something which doesn't really hinder the communication in a way, but it's not perfect, and I want to know these words really perfectly. So then I put a tick and a dot, and that helps me decide. For example, in this case, I needed to distill out of these, let's say this is the second one, out of the 14, I needed to create a list of 10, okay? So 4 expressions had to go away. And if I look at the ticks, I see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I have 4 ticks which I perfectly knew, and then just 2 ticks with a dot. So in that case, I keep the ticks with a dot, okay? If in another list I would only have 2 ticks and 2 ticks with a dot, I would think, okay, can I get rid of this expression? Will I remember it? And this is actually quite an important thing as well, which David James, the author of the method, mentions in his articles. When you decide to put these expressions away and not run them through the distillation again, you actually learn them. And this is a funny thing which works. And he gave a nice expression, a nice example in one of the videos where he said, it's like when you look for your keys, you know, when you lost them somehow, you look for them because you know you have them somewhere. But if you throw something out, like you do the cleaning of your wardrobe and you throw some things out, you never look for them again because you know you threw them away, right? And this is exactly what works with the words as well. If you throw them away, you're not going to look for them like, well, how is it, what is it? You know them because you know that this is your last contact with these words. You're not going to revise this list ever again. Whatever is out, okay? And that for the brain is kind of a signal like, oh, I better remember this word or expression because I'm not going to see it again. You see how that works? It's pretty clever, right? I like how the method works. Okay, so this is what happens when you don't know enough words. What happens if you know more words? So you do the ticks and you go like, I know, wow, good list, you know, I know almost all of them. You still try to pick 70% of those and rewrite it in the next distillation, you know, to keep the method going and to be sure that we have something to distill later on. If you find out here, for example, that you really know them perfectly well, then I would stop with this list and I would just continue with the other ones because we don't want to just rewrite things we already know, okay? So this is about the process of distillation, of picking what stays in and what goes out. Now a few notes about what happens to grammar. Right? Well, this is a method to learn vocabulary, but you can include grammar in it easily. For example, if you're learning German, then I would definitely write the articles, you know, der, die, das, with the word so that you know how to use the word. If you don't know that one, you cannot really use the word. In Russian, if you look at my expressions, all the expressions have underlined accents, okay? So you can see that I always write down how to pronounce the word. Because if you ever learned Russian, you know that if an O is stressed, then it's an O. But if it's not stressed, it's an A. Again, that makes a whole lot of difference. So that's why I always include these grammar notes as well. You can include the past tenses, the irregular verbs, etc. Anything really which you want to remember with this word. But the main concept here is that we're learning vocabulary, okay? By the way, the method can be used for other things as well, not just languages. It can be used to learn chemistry, history, whatever, because it's about the way we learn things into our brain, okay? Now, another thing I want to stress, which I said in the previous video, was that you really need to write these things out nicely by hand. Okay, don't type it in a computer. Don't think of a way how to do it in an Excel sheet, how, you know, copy stuff or anything. The beauty of this method is that you use your hand, and through this handwriting, it kind of, I don't know, it has a connection to your brain or something like that. I don't know the details of how this works, but I know that if I write these things down, it works much better for me personally, than working with Anki, for example, and space repetition system. I prefer the Goldlist method to Anki, but I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like the Goldlist method and instead they work with a space repetition app. It's really up to you, but the handwriting here is quite important. And also try to write it nicely. Take your time, don't rush it, don't try to do it in 5 minutes. You know, take your pride in your writing. And that's when it really works. That's when your brain is at ease and you can learn in a nice and pleasant way, okay? And don't forget, you should not try to memorize it. This is a mistake a lot of people make. They want to be sure. You know, they do a list and they go like, you know, trying to memorize it like the old way we did at school. Don't do it. You will see that after the first 2 weeks, when you start using the method long term, you will trust it because you will see the results. I bet you will. And then you will not worry about remembering anything. I write these words and I never think about like, oh my God, am I going to remember that or not? I know from experience this is not my first Goldlist book and not the only language I've used it for. And I know it's going to work. So I just write them and that's all. I don't really want to learn them because I know I will anyway, right? And it's really a nice intellectual game that I have when doing this. And it never stops amazing me. Like I do the head listing, the distillation, and I always just stop for a minute and I think, This is incredible. I remember 30% of the vocabulary, and I don't know why exactly these words. And sometimes it happens to me that some of these words, which I had been distilling for a long time, they suddenly kind of come into my life. So, for example, I couldn't learn the word poem in Russian for a long time. Стихотворение. I don't know why I couldn't remember it. And then I remember I was, doing the gold listing, and then maybe 2 or 3 days after I did the gold listing of that one particular expression, I was doing the dishes, and suddenly I just стихотворение, and I don't know where it came from, but it was there, and I knew I'm never going to forget that word ever again. This is what I love about the gold list method. It kind of works subconsciously, it gets into your long-term memory, and you really know how to use those expressions in practice. I did a little test myself to see how much I remember of the vocabulary which I learned 8 months ago, and there was no contact with that particular vocabulary in those 8 months at all. And I tested myself very strictly by translating all these expressions from Slovak into Russian, by really covering up all these expressions, saying it out loud, and then checking. And I was really amazed to see that I remembered about 85% of those expressions. And that stayed in my long-term memory. This is how I learn Russian right now. It's the only method I've been using for a few months. And it's really fascinating to see how that works. So if this method interested you, then give it a go. All you need to do is invest in a little notebook, which needs to be pretty, don't forget about that. And you can start writing your head list tomorrow or today. Just write the first head list and then write the date. And in 2 weeks, you're going to go back to it and see how much you remembered, and then rewrite the words which you did not remember. Okay? Now, tomorrow I'm going to show you exactly how my book looks. I'm going to let you peek into my gold list method while I do my distillations in the morning. So I promise I won't look at the words before. So what you will see on the video will be exactly how the method works and how I do it.